robotics industry is really where the computer industry was, several decades ago, where the mobile industry was a couple of decades ago. There's a lot of fragmentation. There are a lot of different people out there trying to build robotic solutions, but the standards and the interoperability aren't quite there yet to support easy adoption, plug and play adoption of this. And so those are some of the things that we're really focusing on.
The IndustrialSage Executive Series, sharing the stories behind game-changing executives, their organizations, and insights into today's industry challenges.
Hello and welcome to today's IndustrialSage Executive Series interview. I am joined by the CEO and founder of Vecna Robotics and also the co-founder and president of Mass Robotics, Daniel Theobald. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today on IndustrialSage.
My pleasure.
So, before we jump into everything here, I would love for you, if you could just give me a little introduction about who Vecna Robotics is and Mass Robotics. What do you guys do? Two organizations, that's got some pretty cool stuff you got going on there. So, but what do you guys do?
Yeah. Well, Vecna Robotics is the world leader in what I would call high-capacity AMRs. So, autonomous mobile robots that move large items, pallets, what are often referred to as non-conveyables. So, kayaks, tires, mattresses, exercise machines, all these type of things that our modern e-commerce society has going through shipping that used to be handled differently. So we are able to fully automate the movement of materials in a facility, taking them from point A to point B safely, reliably, and really exciting. The focus of the company is not just around these type of robots, but also around the idea of how do we really optimize the overall end-to-end workflow. One of the key learnings we had early on is that robots are just as capable at wasting time as human workers, if not tasked effectively.
Yeah.
And so, just trying to insert a robot into an existing process might not achieve the kind of return on investment a customer is looking for. So a big focus of ours through our pivotal software is around this idea of making sure that you've got the right resource in the right place at the right time, and really optimizing the entire workflow through a facility rather than just trying to insert a robot into a particular spot. So that's sort of the headlines of Vecna Robotics. One of the unique things about Vecna Robotics is that we are very active in the area of social responsibility. And from the very beginning, we have paid our employees to spend approximately 10% of their work week contributing to community service in our local and international communities. Well, several years ago, myself and a number of colleagues here realized that there was a need for an organization to really help move forward the adoption of autonomous systems in the industry in a more practical way. There are a number of obstacles that were preventing effective adoption of these type of autonomous solutions. So we used our community service time at Vecna to band together with others in the industry and co-found this organization called Mass Robotics. Mass Robotics is one of the largest, fastest growing industry associations for robotics, IoT, connected devices. And their mission is essentially to facilitate the adoption of this technology by connecting innovators and end users and investors and equipment providers, sensor providers in more effective conversations, and also through working to establish practical interoperability standards that can help ease the adoption of these type of solutions as well. I think the short version of that is that the robotics industry is really where the computer industry was several decades ago, where the mobile industry was a couple of decades ago. There's a lot of fragmentation. There are a lot of different people out there trying to build robotic solutions, but the standards and the interoperability aren't quite there yet to support easy adoption, plug and play adoption of this. And so those are some of the things that we're really focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can only imagine that as because of recent events, just really the demand, the increase of demand for efficiency and technology solutions and innovations, well, just across the board, but specifically was in supply chain, material handling has just gone through the roof.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I would suggest that really what we're seeing as a big impact of this pandemic and some of the changes happening worldwide is that there's an increased appetite for flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. Automation can take many, many forms, and there's what I would classify as very rigid and fixed automation. And then there is flexible automation, which is sort of the next generation of rapidly adaptable automation. And the point of that is that customers realize that planning for the future is harder than ever now. They don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
It used to be that you could design a warehouse or a factory and expect it to operate, essentially as designed for about a decade. That world is long gone now. And many of our customers have trouble predicting what's going to be happening, 6 months from now, much less 5 or 10 years from now. So this has caused a real tectonic shift in terms of the type of automation people are looking for. They don't want big built-in solutions that lock them into a particular process or throughput forever. They want to adopt solutions that can evolve and change rapidly with them as their business needs evolve and change.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting point. Do you think that, as far as the need for flexibility, do you think that was something that was already happening, that was sort of on the horizon before the pandemic, or do you think is that something completely new, or has it just been accelerated?
I think it's been accelerated. Certainly, this has been our thesis from the beginning. I think that thesis has just been strengthened significantly by this. The trend in technology is always towards flexibility. Modern computer technology, modern sensors, et cetera, have really allowed this to happen. It used to be, you go all the way back to the loom workers, the Luddites, some of the first automation that sort of came into the human consciousness in terms of, humans, jobs, technology, how does this all work? It was really as built or very specifically built automation. You would build a machine that was capable of doing one thing, and doing that repeatably again and again and again and again. And that's what led us to the Industrial Revolution. That's what led us to mass production.
Yeah.
The
Scale.
idea that we could efficiently build something. Everything didn't have to be an individual human being, with their hands building each individual item. It was great. It brought tremendous prosperity to the human race as a whole, but we did lose something. We lost that flexibility, right? You go to the store to buy clothes and you have to choose from a set of discrete sizes.
Right.
Someone had built a machine to make this jacket that isn't made specifically for you. It's made for somebody sort of like you. And the exciting new opportunity we have with flexibility is we can regain some of that custom made for you. It will fit you perfectly. It will perfectly address the needs of your operation or business because everything doesn't have to be the same. So that's really where this idea of flexibility is something that has been evolving for a long time. And I think the understanding of how valuable it is in modern industry is really just being underscored now with this pandemic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree 100%. So, we're started definitely kind of jumping in ahead here a little bit, which I'm getting excited about. So, but I want to take it back. I want to take a step back for a second because I want to get to know you a little bit more. I want to get to know Daniel, and how you kind of got into this space. Take me back. Where, was this something that as a kid you were involved in technology, and or was it just something that you picked up later down the road, or you went to school for? What like where did that start?
Yeah, I have been really fortunate, and I realize this more and more as time goes by. I was born in Silicon Valley before it was called Silicon Valley, and had some really great opportunities that at the time I didn't realize were so special. But for example, I had the opportunity to attend probably one of the first 10 elementary schools in the world that had a computer lab. And was able to use their Commodore PET computers, Apple I computers. And to me, it's just perfectly normal. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to the computer lab. This is back in the early '80s. And then, same thing. Middle school, I got to learn programming as a young person, and always just had an incredible interest in technology. My parents were incredibly frustrated by the fact that they couldn't bring something home that didn't end up taken all apart. Sometimes successfully put back together, but more often than not, parts were lost along the way. And then in high school, incredible opportunities to study, programming, electronics, et cetera. And I was really fortunate that I was chosen as the top computer science student in all of California.
Oh, wow.
And was able to attend a program at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, where I got to work on AI projects on, at the time, the world's fastest supercomputer. And there met some very influential people like Edward Teller, who had a big impact on the way I think about technology and humanity and our responsibilities.
That's pretty awesome. So you've been steeped in it, since day one. I think you said you're in elementary school and you had access to, I think it's hilarious. You talked about how, stuff would come home and you would try to, disassemble it and reassemble it, sometimes successfully. Until I remember, we got I don't know what we had, some early computer back in, this was early 90s, maybe late 80s. And I remember messing around on the on MS-DOS. Mm-hmm. And just completely jacking up the computer, doing all like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm just pressing, I'm learning little things. But yeah, that's very, definitely didn't take it to the level that you did. That's for sure. But somewhere down the line, who has there been somebody that's been a big influence on you, or has had a something that has triggered a pivotal moment in your journey?
Yeah, there are a number. Certainly first I would credit my father for instilling in me the values of humanity and our responsibility to help those around us. That has been a foundation of my life from the beginning. And I have to say that that's certainly where I found the most joy in life, is when you know that you're doing something that is making the lives of other people better.
Absolutely. How did he do that? Like, what's a concrete way that you remember that he instilled?
Yeah, so he was very active in Boy Scouts, and so pulled me along through the Boy Scout thing. And service, community service, is a really big aspect of that program. Not so popular anymore for a variety of reasons, but I certainly appreciated having that opportunity growing up. He would drag me to the house of widows who, I remember going to this mobile home park pretty regularly to do maintenance on an elderly woman's trailer. And, I hated it, quite frankly, at first.
How old were you?
Smelled, it was over the years. So probably starting as young as, 5 or 6, and then going all the way up, through my teenage years until I left for MIT. It really was a great experience for me, not just in the fact that, we have a responsibility to help people, but also we were solving problems, right? I had to go in there at a very young age. He expected me to go and look at something, figure out what's wrong with it, and come up with a solution. And I really appreciate that because, you know, as I got to MIT, I have to say one of the things that surprised me, I was so excited to get to this school where I felt like, you know, it would be a mecca of like-minded people who were just fascinated with engineering and technology, et cetera. And it was, but I was a little bit surprised how many people there sort of just chose engineering as a major and didn't really eat it and breathe it and sleep it like I did. And so I was surprised, you know, when I got there, like people didn't know how a car engine worked. They, you know, didn't know how to rebuild an engine. They didn't know how to build a robot. So the fact that I had a very hands-on childhood was very, I think, important in developing at least the way my brain works, which is, boy, if I don't understand how that thing actually works, I'm not going to be satisfied until I do. And I think that broad exposure to a very wide range of different disciplines has been one of the key strengths that I've been able to bring to bear in a lot of these things. You know, the innovation, the exciting opportunities, I think, tends to occur at the interfaces between different disciplines, and so I'm very grateful for that.
That's an awesome story, and it obviously is a testament to, you know, like you mentioned, you know, sort of opening up, talking about sort of your vision on how I think you dedicate 10% of the time, of your employees' time, the company time, you know, towards, you know, nonprofits and charities and helping over there. But obviously, I just think that's such a fascinating story on how obviously that has shaped you from the technology standpoint, from a figuring things out mode, and also that the greater aspect of humanity. I think that's a very, actually a very, very beautiful story.
Well, and I think that, you know, one of the things I've learned over the years is that focusing on the greater good is good business.
Yeah.
And early on, I took a lot of heat for that. I took a lot of heat for people suggesting that you couldn't really run a company, you know, a socially responsible company and be a real company, right? It was maybe a lifestyle company or something like that. And I wholly rejected that premise. I believe that from, you know, and I think the other aspect is a lot of times people feel like, well, first we have to achieve massive economic success. And then once we've done that, maybe we'll think about giving back. I think it's important and incumbent on each of us to figure out how to give back immediately, every day, starting day one. And, you know, so the 10% community service policy opportunity that we've created for our employees has been incredibly successful from a business perspective. Attracting and retaining the world's best talent, attracting and retaining people who are team players, who are uniquely capable of working in a team effectively and solving problems together. We believe we've really benefited from that over the years.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like it. I love it. I think that's fantastic. You know, let's kind of, you know, jump into, you know, we kind of talked about this a little bit, you know, at the beginning, but this is industry challenges, or as I like to sometimes, you know, phrase it, as opportunities. Obviously, there are a tremendous amount out there right now. We talked about flexibility. Obviously, was a huge piece. You know, as we look at supply chain resiliency, and I loved your analogy, just talking about like the Industrial Revolution, for example, which I think is fascinating when you look at history and just how quickly over the last 120 years or so, how much we've evolved. Technologically, you know, you just look at manufacturing and look at the speed of travel. Man, you know, fastest we could travel, turn of the century, was, you know, what, 30 miles an hour or so, and then, you know, when we had the Apollo missions, you know, we're doing 17,000 miles per hour, something crazy like that.
Yeah, it is a really interesting evolution, you know, and I think part of what makes it both simultaneously incredibly exciting and somewhat scary is the fact that the pace only accelerates.
Yes.
Technology creates the opportunity for more technology faster.
Yeah.
And this move from purpose-built machines to general purpose machines has really been driving that. So the fact that, it used to be that a cell phone was to communicate remotely with somebody, and now it is the basis of our society in a sense, and you can use your cell phone for just about any task.
Yeah.
Not something that anyone really would have predicted, but the impact that technology has, it only accelerates, and so that's really why I feel like it's important for engineers to maybe take responsibility to think about, not necessarily completely on, but to at least think about the impact of the technology we create. This was really made clear to me, when I had the opportunity to talk to Edward Teller at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. Had a big impact on me. Not necessarily anything specific he said, but just kind of thinking about the gravity of the implications of the hydrogen bomb, and
right.
All of the factors that would come into that. And you can have a variety of opinions about it, and I don't think there's any right or wrong opinions, but the fact of the matter is we need to be thoughtful about the impact the technology we build will have on the human race. And I don't think it's sufficient anymore to just say, we'll build this stuff and we'll let other people figure out what's right and wrong. The technology, in some sense, is shaping what's right and wrong. You think about social media, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's just a fascinating issue, and it goes back to this idea: we're not going to be able to. We just simply cannot predict the future at
right.
this point. What is going to be happening 5 years from now?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's interesting. I think that's fantastic. I mean, how do you have a methodology or anything on how you, even inside Vecna, on how you think about, like, maybe we'll call it purpose-driven engineering or R&D, or is there a certain phase or something you go through to say, hey, let's really think about the implications of this?
Yeah, I think that it's a team, sort of a team effort, in the sense that we are very driven by the idea of empowering humanity, right? Any products that we get involved with can't be about just, making money for somebody, as much as it is, how do we improve productivity, allowing the human race to accomplish more than ever before? But how do we make sure that benefit is accessible and available to everybody? Our goal is, to improve life for everybody on the planet. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time for the benefits to get there. But again, you think about something like the internet, the massive impact it has had on people's ability to achieve security, safety, equality, access to capital, microloans, to end abuse and those type of things, far, far, far reaching. That wasn't what, the people who are working on connecting to universities over connecting the computers at 2 universities, they weren't thinking about any of that, right? They were thinking about science and building rockets and collaborating. But then this vast positive social impact, and there's negative too, right? But on the whole, I think we agree the vast positive social impact comes out as sort of a side effect.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing, is that the side effects tend to be far more impactful than the original reason that we were building the technology.
Right. Yeah. I'd say it's probably next near to impossible to, no, it is 100% impossible, I think, to actually predict, hey, what's the good or the bad or whatever, for this. But I do like the idea of, having, thinking about it. Certainly as we get into technology and how rapidly accelerated it continues to be, there's a lot of, especially specifically around like AI and machine learning, and obviously robotics is being thrown in there. There's a lot of like, well, it's really interesting, is it one day going to be Terminator, where machines are going to take over, and a lot of interesting, debate and conversation about that. I think that I'm totally blanking on his name right now. Tesla.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Thank you. I can't believe I just totally blanked on that. But anyways, has some interesting thoughts, and I'd be curious on yours.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that that you brought up Elon, because he said something that I really respect not too long ago. When the Model 3 was languishing, production wasn't happening at the rate it was supposed to. He tweeted about how Tesla was owning a mistake that they made. He said, "I made a mistake. We tried to over-automate." And then he said, "People are vastly underrated." And this has been sort of, the thesis with which we've built our automation approach, is that it's really about the empowering the human worker, not replacing the human worker. If you're focused on trying to replace humans and go straight to this lights out automation where, humans aren't involved, you're not going to achieve the kind of results, the kind of value creation that you could otherwise, the kind of resilience, right? There are always problems, there are exceptions. This is exacerbated by the fact that the world is changing more rapidly. The types of products that need to get to consumers are changing rapidly. And so things are going to go wrong. Technology isn't good at handling things going wrong. People are good at handling things going wrong. And true. So achieving that optimal pairing of humans and the technology is really where the key to success is. And so I was really grateful that Elon acknowledged that. Humans are incredible. And until you've built a robot to try and do something that humans do, it's really easy to just sort of believe Hollywood. I'll give you one brief example. Early on, you mentioned the Terminator. We were working on a military research project, a robot to rescue a soldier from the battlefield. It was called the Bear Robot. I was on an interview with the BBC, and of course, the very first thing they said is, "Well, now you've built the Terminator." I said, "Well, no, we haven't built the Terminator. First of all, the robot's objective is to help. But second of all, that's Hollywood. And it's important to understand the difference between Hollywood and a lot of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that surrounds these things compared to actual concrete information." I was meeting with one of our program sponsors on this Bear Robot project, just to draw out this point. And he said, and I'd also like you to have the robot pick up this bottle. And it wasn't part of the project. And I said, "Well, that's not really part of the project. And to boot, that's this is a decade ago." I said, that's a completely unsolved academic problem, incredibly hard problem to solve. And he says, "Well, why?" He says, we paid for cameras for the robot so it can see it. Just tell it to pick it up."
Oh, hang on real quick. Let me just,
Yeah. Well, and so that's the thing, right? We take an incredible amount for granted as human beings because we are amazing.
Yeah, the amount of autonomy that we have, yes.
It's amazing, right? The computer doesn't see things. The computer gets a series of zeros and ones. And somehow a programmer has to take those zeros and ones and try and turn them into some kind of useful information to then make the robot take some actions. We are so far away from the Terminator or AI becoming alive and threatening the human race. Now, humans can use technology to hurt people. That's what we really need to be careful of. But I would say, in general, my feeling is that we don't need to fear technology for technology, the technology itself. What we need to do is go back to my original premise. We need to be thoughtful about how technology is used and applied and make sure that we're not leaving people behind and make sure we're not hurting people and make sure that the technology is helping to empower humanity, not create more problems.
Well, great. No, well, Daniel, listen, I've really enjoyed our conversation. This has been fascinating. We've talked about a lot of different things. We talked about Terminator. We talked about having that human experience, of really being thoughtful around design, around products there, but also just I love your stories, about growing up with your father and just learning to help people, and really building a company that can really be focused on or part of a mission of doing good for people. I think that's fantastic. And then obviously talking about Master Robotics and what you're doing. I think you guys are doing some pretty amazing work, and some stuff there. So for anybody who would love to come check you guys out, just go to vecnarobotics.com. Is that the right URL? And then Master Robotics is what's the website there?
Yeah, masterrobotics.org.
Perfect, .org. So couldn't be any easier. So Daniel, thank you again so much for your time. And hey, anyone
My
wants
pleasure as always.
Awesome. Well, that wraps us up today. Thank you so much for watching or listening today's episode on the executive series here with Daniel Theobald with Vecna Robotics and Master Robotics. Obviously, very, very interesting stuff that we talked about today. So thank you for watching or listening. Listen, if you are not on our email list, you need to go to IndustrialSage.com right now. And you need to subscribe. Why? Because you're missing out on fabulous content like this, where we talk to other executives in the manufacturing industry, the industrial space, technology, supply chain, because there's amazing things that are going on right now that you need to know about. We have manufacturing news and a whole lot of other content that you're missing out on if you're not on right now. So that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another episode on Industrial Sage.
IndustrialSage is an open platform where companies can showcase their expertise and solutions to a captive audience of industrial professionals. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're there, please leave us a review. Want us to tell your story? Go to IndustrialSage.com. This week's episode was produced by Rika Wiersma, filming by Donovan Jones, editing by Rika Wiersma, music composed by Oliver Michael, and executive producers Danny Gonzalez and David Karen. This is the Industrial Sage Executive Series.